Thank you, and good evening, everyone. It's been a long day, and but seeing as you are here for the final session of the day, and thank you for that, I think it's only fair that we use this time to talk about how AI projects can be designed and developed in a manner so as to let the business users derive maximum value from it, so that essentially they have a model and an interface that they can analyze, make sense of, control, as also derive maximum value for their enterprise. Right, so we are talking about taking control of the why, what, hows of AI ML models, and we are going to put this in context to the sales and marketing business process in particular. The reason being that while AI, of course, finds application across industries and business processes, perhaps the impact has been the most profound or is yet to make the most impact for the sales and marketing business process in particular. So if you look at some of the key drivers for AI in sales and marketing, obviously there is personalization, there is automation of business process. If we look at this CXO survey response, some of the motivators is call time reduction, B2B businesses using AI to reinforce sales, marketers using it for personalization or to identify leads and prospects. Now, while these numbers does sound exciting, there is also a flip side to it. And we have seen from our interactions with clients across industries that most of them genuinely believe and do want to use AI in their enterprises for their sales and marketing process, but they are apprehensive of whether that AI solution would be easily integrated across their enterprise and whether they would still be able to continue using the model without having to build an in-house team of data science experts. The reason being that some of the key concerns that typically AI solutions and solution providers fail to address, which is around the lack of skills, the lack of a product approach, the concerns on the scope and quality of the data itself, and the current workflow integration across the enterprise. Now, businesses are wary whether the solution providers will consider it their responsibility to address these concerns. We at Finarb do consider it our responsibility, and we take that rather seriously, which is why we have designed an approach that inherently addresses all these concerns while letting business users get the maximum value out of an AI intervention program. How do we do that? By means of what we call a consult to operate approach across the end-to-end solution implementations. So we start with rapid prototyping, and here we go a little greedy. We want to build the MVPs fast and first, prove value, and so that we can quickly move on to the actual solution build, wherein we look at all the other set of feature variables, extensive analysis of that data. We use state-of-the-art networks to model the data on. And finally, once that is done, we are ready to deliver that through agile sprints. And the results of each stage of that sprint is used to feed back into the model as reinforcement learning, where the model is rewarded or penalized depending on the success or failure outcomes. Once that is done, the model is ready for deployment and beta testing. And a simultaneous exercise that happens along with that is the business user enablement. And that is something we are going to spend some time on towards the end. But just to close the loop here, after beta test, we move into production, obviously, before transitioning into the BAU maintenance and any other enhancements. Now, I'm just going to talk to you about and elaborate this approach that we take in the context of two of our client stories. One of them is for an automobile client, a premium automobile maker, and the other is for an e-commerce reseller of cell phones and accessories. Both of these clients came to us because they are struggling with high churn rates in their customer base, and they wanted to engage their customers with personalized recommendations. In case of the automobile client, they had a huge network of dealers who would typically be engaged with chasing customers with the right kind, with products and financing options. But this dealer network was proving to be high on cost but low on returns, because the client did not have any visibility into what was going on in that particular workflow, and neither did they see any convincing results in terms of conversion numbers. For the e-commerce platform, on the other hand, their challenge was that although they noticed that although the average visits remained kind of similar, the sales, the revenue was on a decline. So this is where we came in and we engaged with the clients. And what we did on the back of this particular approach that we take is that we started with a problem discovery approach to find the right problems to solve and find the right areas to transform for the client. So essentially that would mean a data deep dive, looking at the sources of data they had, how much of that data was usable and was relevant, whether there are any other sources of data that we might use which might prove helpful, and whether we can even use that data, keeping in mind compliance regulations like GDPR, and how much of data preparation and transformation effort was needed. Alongside that, we conducted design thinking sessions where we would involve the business users and stakeholders right from the outset so that we develop the model and the outcomes that they should address right at the start. And what happened as a result of that, we were able to do a value chain mapping of the entire sales and marketing business process for the particular clients we were engaged with, and identify the exact touch points where the bottlenecks lied and which would benefit from an AI intervention. So looking at a typical e-commerce value chain, and once we map that to our particular client scenario, we came up with certain key areas that we wanted to go ahead with in terms of AI intervention, starting from lead generation, churn analytics, campaigns, and recommendations. And I will talk about how that kind of closes the loop on the customer journey. So to take the example of the automobile, we realized that the first thing we wanted to do was to understand the drivers behind churn for each of the customers, and then use those insights to be able to send personalized recommendations to the customers. As a next step to that, we wanted to develop a lead generation platform where insights and recommendations would be sent to the business users, that is the sales and marketing personnel in this case, for them to engage with the customers or the new leads in the right manner with the right content. There are dual benefits of doing this. One, of course, is that it frees up the time for the sales personnel, where they no longer have to worry about finding the right campaigns to chase existing customers with. That can be left to the AI model to handle. And instead, they can rather spend time on focusing on the new leads. And this is important because data for new leads essentially is scarce initially, and they are the ones that would most benefit from a human approach or a human intervention. The other benefit of this is that having a lead generation platform, which we could then integrate with the churn solution, meant that we were able to close the loop on the customer journey, and further downstream that was integrated with the recommendation engine and the campaign management solution to truly give us an end-to-end solution across the sales and business process, sales and marketing business process. So having identified, therefore, what were the problem areas or what were the touch points in the business process that we wanted to go ahead on the AI roadmap, we went ahead and identified what are the features that we would want each of the solutions to have, what are the metrics that we would want them to address and be measured against to determine the success and efficiency of the program itself. So starting with lead generation, here, initially, of course, there is not too much of label data available because these are new leads. So the initial impetus is to be able to identify whom to qualify as leads and then what kind of data and information to share with them so that their chances of conversion are high. And in doing that, the kind of data sources that we would look into would be reviews data. The kind of data sources that, we would look into would be the reviews data, the data from discussion forums, social media, public pages, survey data where it is available, blogs, and all these insights gathered would then be used by the model to gauge the interest level towards a particular product and map a lead to that particular product in that case. Now, once a lead is converted and they become a customer, the onus then is to be able to retain those customers. And this is obviously crucial because the flip side of that is churn, and the reasons for churn could range from something as serious as a bad customer experience to something as momentary as a surprise offer by a competitor website. So essentially, in designing the churn analytics solution, the first thing we set out to do was to identify a target metric beyond which a customer would be considered to having had churned. And in doing this, instead of focusing and targeting only the customers that were identified as most likely to churn, we rather focused on the group that was in between the ones that are most likely to churn and the least likely to churn. So the in-between group of undecided or ambivalent customers who were likely to switch either way is the one we focused our efforts on so that they could essentially be retained and re-engaged. And once a customer is identified as likely to churn with a certain degree of confidence, the next insight that is useful is a customer level insight where the model gives you insights for each of the customer and the corresponding factors that are most significant in explaining the drivers behind churn for that customer. And that is where a truly personalized approach starts to happen for the churn solution, because once you have identified that, you can retain or try to re-engage a particular customer by devising a campaign or a recommendation or a customer grievance redressal tuned to their needs and their problems. So with that, if we talk about each of those retention or re-engagement approaches, then the recommendation engine is a solution where we have both product and price recommendation. Now, the data collected from reviews, from demographics, from transaction history, purchase history, all of that is used to provide a set of recommendations for a particular customer at a given point in time, where what products should they be recommended with at what given price point. And this is done for existing customers across homepage, product category, specific product page, shopping cart, on-site search. In on-site search, one thing that we try and avoid is a no results found scenario. And the other thing that is also given is a bundling of products to enable cross-sell and upsell opportunities. Along with all of this, there is also a dynamic pricing mechanism in place so as to enable customers to be given a particular product at the most optimal price at any given point in time. Along with the recommendation engine, the next other option of re-engagement is, of course, sending them a campaign directly. And again, here, the web analytics data, the reviews data, the product features from the website, social media data from public pages, all of these are taken into account to identify what are the features or drivers that would be most influential for a given customer, and accordingly a campaign is generated. Now, an interesting thing to note here is that while the recommendation engine is a fully automated self-learning system which would provide recommendations for the end consumer directly, the campaign management solution uses personalization to provide recommendations for the business users. So in this case, let's say the sales and marketing personnel, the campaign managers, for example, where they are given cues as to which are the factors that are most important when considering a campaign setup for a particular customer. What this effectively enables is that at the click of a button, a campaign manager can generate a list of products, modulate the price points in a recommended range, and also curate a bundle of products that they can then use to construct a campaign and send across a mail on a button click. So essentially all of this resulting in an end-to-end solution, right from lead to churn to retaining them and re-engaging them with campaigns and recommendation. And if we just go under the hood, the reason why we were able to achieve this is because of the underlying capabilities and features of the product and solution itself. In terms of the data sources, we looked into the CRM data, the point of sale data, the inventory data. This became important because we realized, for example, for the e-commerce platform, their inventory data was not synced real time. So often the platform was showing products that were not even available at the inventory in that point in time. So that became a differentiating capability in the new solution. The web analytics data, social media, survey data were available. Reviews data. This is another interesting aspect because reviews data is one source of data where you can gauge the sentiment of a customer towards a particular product after they have made a purchase. So most of the others would be at the point of sale or at a transaction level. This is where you can gauge the sentiment of a customer a little further in their lifetime journey with, let's say, your product or solution. So this addresses the initial concerns that let's say an enterprise would have regarding data in terms of accessing data to get all 360-degree insights, but also making sure that you are using data, only using data that is useful and relevant. And in terms of the ease of integrating it with applications, present applications across the enterprise, so we already support integrations across most of the popular CRM solutions. We have some of the labels up on the screen there. Point of sale, mailing solutions. BI solutions, of course, these are the proprietary BI solutions. Other than that, there is also the open source BI capabilities that we build. As a result of these tenets and inherent capabilities, these are some of the numbers we were able to achieve for our customers. And this is kind of a combination of both the use cases across the lead conversion rate, across recommendations, for example, search page view time improvement, average user activity, across campaigns. So the campaign group improvement that our solution was able to achieve versus what the dealer network was able to do for the client, and the overall conversion rates from a churn and retention perspective. Now, another important factor which enabled these numbers, and one that kind of brings us back to the first concern we talked about when talking about AI, concerns of AI adoption, is the lack of skills or the ease of use for business users in the enterprise. To put that into context, if we look at Gartner's Hype Cycle that was released, I think, only a couple of months back, we would see that the ones that are marked at the peak of inflated expectations or reaching the slope of enlightenment in the next 2 to 5 years, 2 of them stand out: analytics for customer intelligence and citizen data science. Now, citizen data science is where AI solutions are still being developed by experts and data scientists, but they are delivered to the business in a manner so that it is ready to be used by them, by stakeholders, by business users, in a format where they can actually fine-tune the model, control its parameters, to be able to achieve the outcomes or to be able to generate the insights that they would need to meet their own business objectives or metrics. To give you a sample of what some of those front ends can look like, again, this is with respect to the e-commerce and automobile example that we were talking about. So a user, in this case, this particular user, when they log in, they see a set of curated dashboards that's based on their particular user role and business need. And for example, this user can see the average number of orders per customer, the order value, they can see the increase or decrease in revenue, and they can also see a list of the top products and the corresponding parameters. Now, with a sense of these overall snapshots, if they were to move into the churn solution itself, for example, then this is what it looks like. Now, what this view means is that this is telling the user what the underlying AI model that is deployed in the churn solution, what the model has identified as the most influential factor when it comes to determining the churn of the customer base. So we start with the customer base. We see that the first factor that the model has determined is the manufacturer. So let's say if there are manufacturers A, B, C, the business user can now see the distribution of high risk, medium risk, and low risk churn customers for every manufacturer. At the same level comes location. And if they wanted to delve deeper, then each of these variables branch out into the next variable, which has the next degree of explaining power. And what it means is that the business user can now filter the insights based on the parameters that they want to derive the results on, or they want to filter the data on, generate insights on, and accordingly understand the distribution of high, medium, or low risk churn customers for each of the corresponding factors from the data. Now, from this view, from the model view, if they want to get a sense of what the data looks like at a customer level, then we have a table that looks like this. Now, this table can be curated both for customers or also at segment persona levels. So this is a view for the customer level, and we have a corresponding score, which is the probability score of churn. And corresponding to that, towards the end, we have a recommended action button, where the model gives a recommended next step of intervention. And the last column is direct one-click actions to send campaigns, recommendations, engage them through a chatbot. But if a business user wanted a deeper look into a particular customer, for example, then on clicking on each of those customer hyperlinks, they can open up a model that looks something like this. Now, this is a customer level insight which has an overall snapshot of the customer's transaction or purchase history. And below that, we have two sections, one for recommendation, the other for campaigns. And this encompasses the 4 features we were talking about, so home, cart, category, and search recommendations. And the interesting thing to note here is that, for example, the model has given a list of recommended products, but there is an option for the business user to change the price point in an allowed range as recommended by the model. And as we move along the price point slider, the probability score of churn also changes correspondingly, because this already has factored in the sensitivity of this particular customer towards that price point for the product. So depending on how the probability changes when they sort of change the price, they can decide on an optimal price to feature the product for the customer. On the campaign side, we have the bundle products option, where the model gives a certain set of product bundle, and the business user can select which product bundle they want to send a campaign to. And on clicking that send button, the campaign is constructed directly at the backend and sent to the customer. The other key insight at the user level is the keywords. These keywords basically are explaining what are the most important drivers for this customer when they make a purchase decision or when they are browsing or engaging on the particular site. And these can then be used to keep in mind when engaging the customers with recommendations or the kind of content that can be curated on the campaign mails, for example. And again, we have another option here for campaigns, which is top match products, pretty much again being able to move the price point along an allowed range, and then selecting the products and the corresponding price points to send campaign mails with. Cart recommendation, again, the behavior is similar to the homepage recommendation we looked at. The third customer level insight is the feature importance. Now, this is derived from the last purchase history of the customer, where the model is generating a percentage distribution of which feature is important and what is the degree of their importance in determining the preferences or the likelihood of a customer to purchase a product. And with this, again, so these are direct insights which can be kept in mind when we are trying to update our product list on the home page or any of the corresponding search pages. And the price point campaign recommendation, where again there is a price point movement with which you can send campaigns to. So this essentially is the crux of the story when it comes to the business user enablement side of things. And I cannot emphasize enough the need for businesses today or AI solution providers today to get this right, because not having an in-house team of data scientists should not be a deterrent for any enterprise today to not be able to realize the full potential of AI, which is why while engaging with customers, we want to make sure that we are able to give them the best AI capabilities in terms of the models that need to be used. However, they are still able to make sense of the model, use the model to meet their business objectives and metrics as decided in the discovery sessions without having to understand the underlying code or algorithms of the model themselves. And this is how we essentially solve the first big problem that we started with, which is the lack of skills and therefore the need for AI solutions to be easy to use, and giving the control back to the business users to be able to control the model and its parameters and fine-tune it for their particular business. And because this is sort of, these are developed organically with participation of the business users right from the start of the journey, so these can essentially, the guiding principles can essentially be applied across any industry or business process. And just to give you a sense of the various kind of engagements we have done in the past across industries and processes, these are a few of our client logos. We are actually at booth AI 163. We'll be there tomorrow. So if you have any questions now, or if you want to discuss on any of these points later or tomorrow, we'll be happy to take those questions. My colleague Abhishek is also going to be there with me, our data science director. So we'd be happy to take your questions then or now. And thank you for listening in, and thank you for staying. Thanks.